this week about how much fault Mourinho should take for allowing a player like Mohamed Salah to go. Of course, he was at Chelsea, and there was two arguments. The first argument was, well, he wasn't ready for the challenge. That time Mourinho said he wasn't up to it, and therefore he had to let him go because he just wasn't the player that we see now. The second argument is, well, hang on a second, it's up to you as the head coach to make him the player that he is now, and you didn't do that, therefore you failed in your duty of care to the player. What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the PFA Player of the Year awards last week. Mohamed Salah #1, Kevin De Bruyne #2. Both players Mourinho had at Chelsea. Both players he failed to get the best out of at Chelsea. And you look at Alexis Sanchez. He had a decent game in the FA Cup semi-final last week, and even Eamon's friend Mr. Pogba. They're kind of flair players, and they're just not the kind of players Mourinho gets the best out of. And I just look at Salah, and Mourinho didn't even give him a chance at Chelsea. So for him to come out now and claim it was Chelsea's problem and not his why he didn't make it at Chelsea is absolute nonsense. He had these two great players under his wing. He just decided he was going to stick with his kind of old guard, the guys. Mourinho wants guys around him who will give blood for his cause and will stand his corner. And you look at the way Juan Mata, look at the way Luke Shaw, and a lot of these guys at the moment are being completely sidelined. Anthony Martial, they're just not Mourinho kind of players, and they're all Salah. You look at Anthony Martial, say Salah and De Bruyne. Martial might not be in the same class, but he's that kind of player, and Mourinho just doesn't really want to embrace these guys, and that's why they didn't work at Chelsea. So for him to come out and try and pretend it wasn't his fault, I think he's talking nonsense.
To use a horse racing analogy, Eamon, it's a bit like JP McManus buying a horse for $500,000 at the sales, giving him to me to train, and the horse doesn't win any races, and then he goes over to Willie Mullins and he wins everything around him. It's a bit like that.
Well, yeah, I think the point about Mourinho is he likes ready-made players. He doesn't like works in progress. And De Bruyne, before Guardiola went to City, was a player who wasn't quite fulfilling the promise, and all the bits didn't join up. All his skill set weren't quite joining up to produce results, and I think Guardiola found a position on the pitch and gave him the confidence. And the same is true of Mo Salah. He's not going to do the kind of donkey work that Mourinho tends to like, but he's very, very gifted, and I think Klopp has coached him brilliantly. And in fact, all of those front three, Firmino as well, Klopp's shown patience with them, and patience is something Mourinho hasn't got. But if you look at the players he loves, it's John Terry, it's Drogba, it's people like that. Frank Lampard, of course, was a ready-made player. Guardiola actually works every day on the training ground with them, and you can see improvement. And I don't think, he had Salah and didn't recognise what he had. That's the fact. He had De Bruyne and didn't recognise the potential that was there because he wasn't looking for potential. What he was looking for was the finished article.
Yeah.
And that's an important distinction that you have to make.
Yeah, text in from Eamon Kildare. Hugh, as I said earlier on, Jose buys stars. He doesn't make players into stars. He does his club a disservice when he dispenses with such young potential.